of 2023. Happy New Year. City Club members, friends, and community members, welcome. My name is Erica McAlpin, and I'm your City Club of Central Oregon Board President. Before we get started, I would like to thank our Community Platinum and Gold sponsors and partners: ASI Wealth Management, the City of Bend, COCC, OSU Cascades, St. Charles, Pacific Source, Central Oregon Association of Realtors, and Brooks Resources. We're going to open today's forum with some discussion and interaction at our tables. Please take a moment to discuss the question, what is the purpose of youth sports? Instructions on how to submit your one-word answers are on the screen. Please take a moment to discuss at your table and submit responses. Thank you.
This is the right question. But the question is, one word. It started out.
I hate to interrupt great discussion, but if you look at the screens, it looks like your top responses were fun, teamwork, and development. So now let's take a look at your responses compared to the submissions from local students, which included fun, active, exercise, and team. Now let's move on to our forum. Moderating today's discussion is Jay Bowerman. Jay is a retired science teacher and remains involved in education as a research mentor through the Bend Science Station and through independent research in aquatic ecology, studying fish, frogs, snails, and leeches. Jay participated in a variety of youth sports from the early 50s and 60s, competed in international sports through the 1970s, and mentored young skiers and runners for another 30 years. Mr. Bowerman.
Thanks, Erica, and thanks everybody for coming out today. I hope I can keep this moving along well. Growing up, I didn't have a lot of opportunities to participate in many of the organized sports that we're going to talk about today. We lived out in the country. It was 4 miles to the small town of Coburg, where I went to school for most of my education time. I did play Little League ball for a while. I was in Boy Scouts for 3 meetings. And that was about it. But I did have 2 brothers, so play and sports was continual, living in the country where we did. But I thought I would just comment as a biologist and ecologist. Ethologists, people who study the behavior of animals, frequently talk about how ubiquitous play is among animals and how essential play is for development and for preparation for whatever that particular species engages in for as long as it can hang on. So we're going to be looking at that role in the human species today. And I'm going to try to move the program along fairly quickly because we don't have a lot of time, and we have a group of panelists here who have lots of interesting things to say. So I think at this point, let's just bring the panelists up and we'll keep moving along. We've got Rich Ekman from Bend Parks and Rec. We have Shauna Hicks from Madras Aquatic Center. We have Marcus LeGrand from the Bandon Pond School Board and any number of other things. Many of you know Marcus. And of course, Dave Turnbull, coach from the very successful Summit High School. So I'm going to start with, I think we'll move ahead. I had some statistics up there that I wanted to run over. A few things. Back up to that one about success. Where are we? There we go. Playing sports. Correlations between sports. All of these things are simply examples of the role that play has in development and success. So let's put those on. Interesting, if you haven't seen these before, about the role between successful women in American enterprise and the high proportion of them that reflect back on their role in playing team sports. And what we're really going to focus on a lot today is the fact that there's a lot of people that don't always have access. And so what I'd like to do right now is ask a yes or no question for each of the panelists. And that is, do our youth have adequate resources? And we might as well start right here with you, Dave.
All right, I'm not sure you want more than a yes or no, but I'm just
Not
gonna
yet.
say, no, we don't have enough resources.
Marcus?
No.
Shauna?
No.
And Rich?
No.
Okay. So, having settled that, and I'm not sure what order to go in here, but so the next question is, Kim, if you can, what resources are missing? Let's start on the other end and come this way. Rich? And each of you can speak from sort of your own area of expertise, what you see is what's missing.
We have longer than today to discuss this. There's a lot. Facilities, green space, gymnasiums. We have lack of coaching, lack of officials, so it's broad.
That's within your program. You could use more of each of those things. Shauna?
Speaking for Jefferson County, I would say the same thing. Lack of finances, public transportation, gym spaces, coaches, and just green space in general.
And from my standpoint, as an official, we need a ton of officials. I mean, because our three critical issues are pay is one, the commitment. People understand it's a large commitment to officiate. It takes a lot of time away from your family, so on. And additionally, is some of the behavior is a key thing too.
Ooh.
And
Yeah.
that's a key thing. A lot of reasons a lot of people aren't FAing anymore, or really delving into actually being an official.
I hope we can come back later, depending on how the time goes, and address how we approach some of those, and that's going to be a really important one. Dave, what's missing in your program?
Our program has plenty of energy. We lack the resources that they stated. We lack some parental support. I love our parents, but at a track meet it takes, for the Summit Invitational, it takes 110 volunteers, and we struggle to get parents to come out. I think the resource of time is one that we don't talk about. People are so busy with their lives, there's not the time to come out and put in. And at a track meet, you're gonna go out and stand in 32-degree weather for 3-4 hours, and not many people wanna do that, and I understand that. Speaking to behavior, we just canceled out of a fundraiser we've done for the last 6 years at the Central Oregon Basketball Organization state tournament here. We make $12,000 to work 2 weekends, that's good money. We stopped doing it because how rude the parents are, how difficult it is. They yell and scream at our kids for running a scoreboard. And we just said, we're not doing that anymore. I won't put the kids in that situation. So behavior is a big part of what we're looking at. But I think specifically, we're looking at what the shortfalls are with our youth programs and why.
So, yeah, hopefully we can have a little more time for that. I want to move to another question and hopefully come back to this if we've got time. And that is, there's a lot of statistics that have developed, one of which is there's an increasing number of kids that are ending up injured, often due to overuse injuries. And so the question is, are we asking kids to specialize too soon and too often? And Dave, I'd like you to address that first because you're really close to a lot of those kids.
Yeah, overuse injuries, specifically, we see a lot of ACL tears. I remember when I was in high school, kids did 3-sport athletes. I see some of my classmates out there. My girlfriend was one of the few that had an ACL tear just from a jump stop in basketball, but you didn't see it. And I'd say at Summit High School, Mike might attest to this, our AD is here today. I would say we probably see between 5 and 10 ACL tears a year at Summit, rotational injuries, and these are mostly club athletes that don't get a chance to stop. So that's our big push for multi-use, sports. Do get in a different plane of movement, do something different. And we've had pretty good success getting the club sports out for track, and I think that's partially why we found the success. We get the soccer players to come out and run. We work with all the programs, and if you can only make 2 days a week, we'll work with you. And pretty soon that becomes 4 days a week because they see the value in it. Injuries are a real thing, and many of you have seen this before, and I don't think it's gonna go away as long as these kids are doing year-round in one sport.
And for me, looking at specialization, if the parents have the resources to specialize, I get that and understand that's what they want to do for their kid, and understand a lot of times it's an investment for most parents, but everybody doesn't have that option. And many of those students are reluctant to go back out for their sport because they don't have the resources, or they're thinking, or even parents are thinking they have to keep up with the challenges to be able to get their students into a sport. And that's unfortunate that we have gotten to the point where everything is so monetized just to even play a sport. I think when we were all growing up, a lot of this stuff was free. We did a lot of fundraisers, and I know we still do a lot of those things, but the unfortunate part is I think we've gotten away from why sports were important and what it builds for the community and for the students. And I think specialization, yes, it's great if you feel that's where your athlete wants to go, if they want to do that. However, I think it does hinder some of the things that they can do with their regular team sports as well.
So if I hear you, there's a distinct difference between a kid who says, I really love it, I want to do it, versus a parent who says, I want you to specialize in it because you're not going to make the cut if you don't.
That's a hard discussion to have within their families, and they're going to have to do that. And how much autonomy does a student have in that conversation, right? Because most kids are going to listen to their parents and say, sure, mom, dad, but they don't want to let them down, or whatever, and so on. And that's the tough part, is figuring out what the student wants, or what that young man and young lady wants to be able to do in terms of sports. So we got to continue to give them that option to do so, and I think that hinders a lot of it. Now, this is my opinion. Like I said, I don't know how other people think, but that's just me. So
There's been a lot of attention paid since the last Olympics in what now is known as the Norwegian model. And do any of you want to speak to what that model is? The Norwegians had a, what was it called? A kind of a Bill of Rights for kids' sports.
Children's rights in sports.
Tim, what was that again?
It's called Children's Rights in Sports, and there are 7 points, and it comes down from the federal level that kids have influence and opinions that need to be listened to, that they have a right to competency and skills, that they have a right for fun and friendships. So there's 7 different points. Basically, it's following the best practices of sports science and athlete development.
Yeah, so they have a national model, and if I remember correctly, until they're 13 years old, they're not even allowed to specialize. They're encouraged to be in sports, the sports are supported, and the kids have been in anywhere from 5 to 10 different sports before they reach that 13-year threshold when they begin to find their way into their respective sports. But those of you who watched track and field in the last Olympics would be fully aware that they had some pretty good success, especially in events that the Nordic people are not necessarily known for. We're not talking about their cross-country skiers and biathletes, but their 400-meter intermediate hurdler and 1,500-meter runner. Anyway,
And real quick, Jay, Real Sports on HBO actually has an expose about it. If you want to check it out, you can check it out on YouTube as well. And they talk about it. Many of the students also, they don't keep score. Every student gets to participate, but at the same time, too, if a family can't afford it, they waive the fee. So the students can continue to actually engage in the sport. If they have transportation issues, they find ways to come together as a community to be able to get transportation for the students to get there. So yeah, it's a great expose. It's pretty awesome to watch.
let's move to the next question. We're going to end up circling back to some of this before we get done. So this question is, how can parents best support the kids in this effort? And I think each one of you is going to have something to say. So from your own perspective, what can they do that's positive? And once we get through those 4 answers, I would like each of you to come back and tell us, what's the one parental behavior that makes you cringe?
Just one.
Well, there are certainly many, but what's the one that each of you probably has an anecdote, and that's what I'm looking for, is a chance to share, so that those of you who are parents or grandparents or mentors or coaches or whatever can help guide us in that direction. So,
Well, I think parent support is huge. Personally, I chose this career as a sports program coordinator for Bend Park and Recreation, coming on 32 years now. It's because of my experience growing up. I had great support from my parents and my coaches, and they challenged me, but they supported me. I never felt pressured, and they made the activity fun. And so that was huge for me. And so that's why I've chosen the career that I have chosen, is because I want parents and coaches to be the people that I had mentoring me growing up. So I think parent support is huge. I think narrowing it down into a nutshell of what they can do, that's pretty hard to do, but just positively encouraging kids to do what they want to do. Pushing them a little bit is fine, but pressuring them, going back to the specialization Marcus talked about, keeping up with the Joneses, is I understand parents want what's best for their child, right? And if Marcus is having his child play soccer year round, in order for my child to keep up, I'm going to have my child play year round. And so I think we need to re-educate parents and coaches on what is good for a child, and that specialization in one sport year round can lead to injuries, and that playing baseball can improve their skills in basketball or football, and give them other activities to enjoy. So parental support obviously is, I think, at the top of the list for a child's enjoyment of sports.
I think one of the big things is just remember that it is a recreational league, and nobody's getting scholarships at the park when you're in preschool. So just and playing the sports more than just playing the sports, learning how to work as a team, learning how to be a leader, learning how to work with different people of all backgrounds. And kids follow the lead of their parents and their coaches, so just being a good role model and demonstrating that.
3, sportsmanship. You're the example. So if your kid sees you doing it, they're gonna do the same thing. Also, what she mentioned, your kid in the 4th grade is not going to the NBA, so them tucking their jersey, not listening to the rules, pointing up to the sky, taunting, doing those things, sportsmanship is really, really critical. Because if they see you acting, they're gonna do the same exact thing, all right? Second thing, please, parents, support your child. Do not yell and scream at them. Please do not yell and scream at them, and do not use profanity at them. As an official, I hate when I see a parent yell and scream and use profanity at their own kid. Even coaches. They're in a developmental stage in their lives. They need support. They do not need you yelling and cursing at them. Please do not do that. And the third thing I would love to continue to see happen for parents and students, thanking the officials and the people who are there doing the work. I love that they do that these days. It really makes me feel good as an official of 21 years seeing these kids do that. And it brings joy to my heart that they are actually showing that compassion for what we do out there.
Ditto, but my biggest thing when I talk to parents is what we're doing out there is not about you. We have a lot of parents that, and I gotta admit, I'm guilty with this one. I had to kick my own daughter off the team for drinking. That's a tough one. She qualified for state the year before, and then I had to explain to everybody at the state meet when they're saying, "Where's your daughter? You know, she's ranked number 2 in the state." Well, she's home. She broke our contract. And I felt that somehow reflected on me when I'm talking to people and everybody's like, "I'm so sorry." It's not about me. I'm holding her accountable. That's what it's about. These are life lessons. I'm holding her accountable. She knows the rules. She broke the rules. She stays at home. Right? So these are the lessons. And when I was listening, you guys are from this area. Remember Bruno's grocery store, little tiny market? Those are my parents. So now you know. They didn't come to all of my events. They couldn't. They were working. They owned a store that was doing things. So their encouragement was dropping me off at practice when I'm 15, 14, and me getting in the car telling mom how I did. They didn't go to track meets. They went to state. And we have parents at every single event, which is awesome. We want it. As long as they know it's not about them. And so if we can get that message to our parents, it's not about you, it's about your child's development. You are helping in that, and we hope they've got some of those life lessons about saying thank you and all of those things when they come out. And probably the thing I'm most proud about with our kids is after a track meet, the officials come up and thank us for being good ladies and gentlemen. And we get emails and letters from coaches saying, "I can't believe your team cleaned our stadium after those are the things you teach that sometimes we're finding they're not being taught at home." And so our lessons are deep. And finally, I tell our parents, being a parent here is not a spectator sport because we need all of you. And so you're part of the team and just supporting everything we do.
Having run through that, any second thoughts from any of you? Because this is a really critical area. Anybody have an anecdote of a behavior that people should be aware of that you wish never happened? I say that because when my kids were young, they were attending the Sun River Prep School and they had a lousy soccer team. Too few kids to mount a real team. They played mixed boys and girls because that's what it took to get that number of people on the field. But the thing that stands out the most was Portia Marks. The only audience member I ever know of that got red carded. The game stopped. The referee came over and walked into the stands and stood in front of her and held up the red card and ordered her off the field. And she deserved it.
I cleared the gym at Summit High School of all their parents. It was one of those middle school state championships. The parents were so rude. We stopped the game. Parents had to go out in the courtyard and the kids continued playing.
A blanket red card.
It had to be done. It's it became too much about them and they took offense when a player bumped into their kid. It's basketball, it's physical, and at 5th grade, they don't control their bodies very well. So there's gonna be a lot of fouls, right? And so we're standing there watching it and it's like, okay, this is ridiculous. If you want your kids to play, all the parents outside.
And understanding what he's talking about in terms of basketball as an official, many of those officials who are working those tournaments are some of our newest officials. They're just starting out. They need your support too, because how it works in the officiating game is you start at the lower levels and then you move up progressively, right? And you may not make it to the professional ranks or to the college ranks, but they inspire them to do that, but unfortunately many of them may not do that. Many of them are just starting out. Many of these people are coming out at 40 and 50 years old to do this too. So many of them are not used to being able to do a lot of this work as well. Officiating is not easy. Controlling the game, that's why I wish more parents would have to do it for a year, mandatory. Because then you realize how hard it is. One of mine, I think the worst, not closing out, cleared out a few gyms too. The worst for me was, I was at a college game once and I was the only black person in the whole entire gym except the players. And I had a board region tell me the only reason I was calling fouls because the players were black for the opposing team. So I had to have him escorted out of the gym. And the AD, everybody had to come, it was a big to-do because he just kept saying it the whole entire game. And I was the only black official on the crew. So yeah, I had some doozies.
I think going off officials is, my organization, we use 14 and 15-year-olds as our officials, so this is their first job. They don't like confrontation, so if a parent starts yelling or a coach, they're gonna freeze up and they're just gonna stop calling all the plays. So just being supportive and know that they're there to help correct and learn the game. They're learning their job too, so.
Yeah, I think officials is the theme. We had our training last night. We had 30, 14, and 15-year-old boys and girls that we're trying to train to control 3rd through 5th grade basketball game starting Saturday. And we'll have parents in the stands critiquing their performance. And what we try to preach to parents is, remember that's a child out there officiating your basketball game. So just like your child is playing in that game, that's a child officiating the game. So keep that in mind if you're critiquing their performance out there. We don't keep score in our 3rd through 5th grade basketball league, and people may not understand that. Why? It's competitive. Sports is competitive. You have to have a score on the scoreboard. Well, we tried it one year, and it was a nightmare. All of a sudden, those missed calls, the missed traveling call down the stretch at the end of the game that had an effect on the scoreboard was critiqued loudly by the parents in the stands or the coaches on the sideline. And all of a sudden, that scoreboard became so much more important than everything else in that game. The development, the teamwork, the sportsmanship, everything that we're trying to benefit from these sports. All of a sudden, the scoreboard was, all the kids would look at the scoreboard after a bucket to see what the score was. And that became the focus. And so we tried it for 1 year and we haven't done it since. So.
Okay, earlier on, I asked each of you for what was missing in our resources. And it was both physical resources, facilities, space, all that sort of thing, and emotional and behavioral resources as well. So let's circle back now and take a look at how can we meet the needs of our youth sports. So, and this will sort of, I think, take us to the end of our allocated time, but let's just go through and see what we can come up with for.
Yeah,
where do we go
I'll
from
start
here?
and I'll talk real briefly, but so these are common issues, right, everywhere in the world. I think we need to do the best with what we have, okay? I understand we can improve things, but we need to educate parents and coaches a little bit that the little grass space that we're able to give you at Miller School so kids can practice right near in their neighborhood for soccer is going to be sufficient to teach them skills and make the sport fun. They don't have to play on a full-size soccer field with full-size goals. So our resources are lacking, and we can do what we can to try to improve those, but I think we need to try to work with what we have the best that we can. And that takes challenges from the professionals to do that.
Kind of like, where is my man? I just saw him. We were just talking. 6'9", you can't miss him. Oh, there he is. I like what Redmond's doing with you guys with basketball. You basically, the school district is helping with the developmental piece. In terms, we need that. Like, is Park and Rec going to be the developmental level, and is the high school sports going to be able to get the scholarship piece, because they need to mold together to find the ways to build resources? Who's going to be involved? Is it community? Is it corporate America? Who's going to help with these pieces here, to be able to help those pieces, to be able to find out structure levels? Because if we want all students to participate, we have to find means for them to be able to work together in all these things. Like you're saying, one small grass space, but if the school can use one, and they can practice there, and then use Big Parks and Rec as developmental piece, how do we come up with a system that works? So if I'm a 4, 5-year-old and I'm going to Park and Rec first, and then I jump up to his club track thing, by the time they're in middle school and high school, how do we start working on those different levels? I think we really got to find a way to combine resources to help each other out. I think that's what Redmond did a good job of doing. And I noticed that you guys did that, so I thought that was a good way to look at it.
I think facility limitations are a problem right now. When we build a high school, typically we put 2 gyms. If you're lucky, you have a 3rd auxiliary gym that's pretty small. But even at Summit, that's, in my eyes, a new school, even though it's 21 years old now. We have 2 gyms, and if you just do a basketball season, you've got 3 girls teams and 2 gyms, your boys are practicing until 8 or 9 o'clock at night just to get their practices in. And so when we, structure new bonds, we need to start looking at that and build more gym space for kids so that we can actually get those kids home at a decent time, and then some other programs can use those spaces. Because when we try and keep kids involved all year, I have a lot of kids, I'm not a big fan of year-round sports, but I offer a year-round program. Because a lot of the kids that we have been cut from soccer or cut from basketball. They don't make those teams. Well, instead of sending them home, you can come out and do track. And we don't actually, most of you aren't familiar with our club and what we do, but during the summer, our summer conditioning, they're running football routes and catching footballs, and we're playing soccer and we're striking. I'm trying to build athletes, not track athletes, because I understand how that works. But without those facilities and spaces, the schools actually do a pretty good job designing athletic complexes in the space they have. And we were fortunate at Summit to really convince them to put in a top-tier track and field program. And I was just talking to Mike Smith about this. If you build it, they will come. You guys probably aren't aware that the track meets that we've held at Summit High School have brought in over $2 million to our city. $2 million, just filling hotels and restaurants. When you host a junior Olympic track meet, it's not a high school meet. They're 7-year-old kids, and so the whole family comes to support them, and they fill all the hotels. We need to do a better job of understanding the income possibilities from building facilities that can host multiple events, and take a look at sports tourism. It's a real thing, and we can benefit from other people's money. Get them to come in, take that money, build our facilities, and now we've got space for our kids to play. But until we develop a model, Spokane just did a good job of building a $57 million facility. From the front, you go, oh, $57 million. Folks, that's going to be paid off in about 3-4 years. And they will now have a facility that continues to produce revenue. So I think we have to change our high schools, at least in my opinion. They have to change their thinking that what we're putting in is a cost. No, it's an investment. And it will return the investment if you do it right. If you cut corners, it won't. And so we have to change the way we think about this. We have to look at sports as an opportunity to build our programs, build a monetary source for our schools, and we just aren't there yet.
When you talk about the dollars, it reminds me that one of the things we haven't really touched on is the barrier, the economic barrier to participation that exists for so many people, not only in our community, but across the country. Any thoughts on how we address that issue? I mean, I know that your Parks and Rec programs have some sort of scholarship things. Why don't you explain that, and then in terms of the question, how do we improve our access for kids, what can we do?
Yeah, the Park District does have a scholarship program, and it's for any of our programs, not just sports, but anything that someone wants to register for a Park and Rec program. And the funding is allocated based off of their income, number of people in their house. So they simply apply, and then it goes to an approval board, and they approve funding for a particular sport. I think educating the community that that's available is really important, letting people know that they can use that. We do our best to keep our sports as economical as possible for parents. Again, that's why I chose this position, is because I want a child to be able to participate in a Park and Rec program that whose parent can't afford club sports or a year-round sport, and still have aspirations to continue playing sports in high school and beyond. So it's real important that we keep sports as economical as possible. That can be challenging. But Park and Recreation has an outreach program where we're going out into the community and trying to find lower income parts of the area and trying to educate them on what's available to them. I think that's important.
But even with those sorts of programs, one of the things that comes up time and again in any other analysis is that economic barriers are still preventing a lot of people, even their perception that they can't afford to be there, and that parents can't afford to drive them there.
Yeah, going with the same thing is, we have a low permanent tax rate, so we have to subsidize our programs through grants, scholarships. We look at outside partnerships. We partner with a lot of places in Madras and Jefferson County in general to provide scholarships for certain groups of people. But people see that as a sticker shock, and we also have a lot of people traveling from Antelope, Warm Springs, just everywhere. So trying to get to Madras to participate is another huge barrier with time and money and everything.
And even as a school district, we do have scholarships for students to do it, but unfortunately, like I said, a lot of students don't want to take it. They don't want a handout. Like I said, a lot of times that happens as well. From an officiating standpoint, beginning officials, your first piece of your equipment is going to cost you almost $250 just to start off the rip as it being an official, because you got to buy your uniforms, you do all this. That's not counting your fees that you have to pay for state, and also you got to pay for all your books that you get in terms of training. And on top of that, we reimburse you as an organization, as a association, after you've actually committed that first year, because we don't know if you're gonna stick around, right? Because they say success for an official is 3 years. After 3 years, you'll know that you're committed to it. So what we've started to do as officials is also give people our hand-me-down equipment to be able to continue to do it. You know, I think I gave officials so many uniforms over the years, or help them with a scholarship to help them continue to keep officiating. So I totally understand it's a cost.
Yeah, so there's another model that I'm aware of. I don't know a whole lot about it, but Tim Gibbons is here. He used to work for Kids Sports Play that provided funds for kids to participate. Tim, in a minute or two, could you kind of explain how a program like that works?
Yeah, actually, there's an employee from Every Kid Sports here, Bryce Elliott. And I worked at Every Kid Sports for 2.5 years. And so basically, if you're on a federal assistance program like SNAP or WIC or TANF, then you would qualify, and sometimes up to 100%. So average participation sport fee across the U.S. is about $150. I know, like, you look at Ben Lapine School District, it's $100, and I know Bend Park and Rec District have tried to keep their fees down. But what it says is that girls have much lower participation rates, and girls of color have even much lower. So sometimes 3 times less than what you would see in boys. So there still is, even if you don't qualify for the federal assistance programs, and you have 2 or 3 kids, you still cannot pay those fees because it's still a burden, an economic burden. So family of 4, it's about $25,000 that meets the federal poverty guideline to get those federal assistance. So, you know, there's a lot of great coaches and programs that will reduce the fees, but it still is a huge burden on kids of color and girls in this country.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. So there's one stakeholder group that hasn't really been represented here, and that's the kids themselves. And Amy solicited responses from the kids, and as we get ready to move to the Q&A, Amy, would you give us a summary of what the kids told us about all these same questions?
Sure. You want me to come up to the mic, or? Yes. Yes.
Hi, I'm a 20-year educator, Amy Sabadini, and I've lived in this community for a while, and I really enjoyed listening to your responses. Thank you. We sent a survey to some of the teachers I know in the region, and some of them responded with some eloquent answers. So with who's benefiting and who isn't, the one I thought was the funniest was adults are benefiting from youth sports more than kids. Parents and Ben take their kids' sports very seriously. Things that you would expect to see, which have already been mentioned, people who want exercise but are not good at the sport are not benefiting because there's not room for them on the teams. If you can't afford the program, one student said, the kids who are able to afford expensive club sports are benefiting, but those who cannot afford the program are not, and the gap between abilities rises. Then the kids are unable to make even school sports. There was a mention that it really benefits people with athletic talent, but if you were just interested in play and exercise, there wasn't a lot of opportunity. There's also a social barrier perception. Now this is not scientific, this is anecdotal, but that perception is there. Some people feel excluded if the community within that sport is so tight-knit, they can find it hard to get involved. Kids who already have a lot of skills are benefiting, so that club aspect coming up. And then from a regional perspective, and why I'm really glad you're here, Shauna, club level is mostly limited to Bend, not Lapine, not Redmond, not Madras or Prineville. Transportation and time become another hurdle on top of the cost. For their last question was, how can we increase positive outcomes in our communities? They had good ideas. One of them was include kids' voices on major decisions in the community. I did invite a lot of students today, and none of them thought they could miss class to be here, which tells you how rigorous the academic expectations are. They said they wanted more open teams for lots of people to join and have local games instead of traveling. They wanted more gardens, outside gyms, open spaces, and this was funny, paying teachers an actual livable income. I don't know why that came up with that question. Probably because a lot of their teachers coach. One student said requiring more PE for more years in school and more sports in school and making them free. More fun after school sports for kids, just fun pickup games after school and more intramural. And then one said more YMCA style gyms and expand clubs to all of Central Oregon. So thanks for the opportunity.
Very good. We could go a long time up here, but we've got some very knowledgeable people here, and I think it's appropriate now to open it up to question and answers. And Kim or somebody, how are we handling the Q&A?
It's up on the screen.
Okay, is somebody managing that? Because I don't know how.
Yep, I am. So just go ahead and ask the question you see up there. That's the panel.
What have you seen to be successful in helping parents with their behavior? We've identified some behaviors that are less than admirable. how do we teach the parents? Anybody?
I've been pretty fortunate. I really haven't had that many parent behaviors. Track and field is pretty simple. It's a numbers game. If you're top 3, you're varsity. If you're not, you're not. But this last year, I did have to tell a parent that called me at 8:30 at night because his kid qualified for nationals, and he was upset that I didn't send an email home. He took his kid to the qualifying event and watched his kid qualify. And I'm like, do I have to send an email home to? So these are the things you have to deal with parents. So a lot of times it's just the one-on-one. Listen, you can't call me at home at 8:30 at night. It's off limits at that time. That's when I'm with my family. If you have an opening parent meeting, you can really take care of most of this stuff. And if clubs aren't doing that, they're missing an opportunity. And finally, years ago I had a parent that was just too much into it. He had a clipboard with every kid's time in the state. He'd bring it out, tell his son what was going on. That kid got so frozen he could not compete. So I barred the parent from going to track meets. But here's the funny thing. He was so good with statistics, I hired him. He is still helping 15 years later. So sometimes you just find the strength in what you see as a weakness, and you give them a job opportunity and you take care of it. So that's one strategy.
I think getting them to understand that these coaches are volunteers and they also had the opportunity to volunteer to coach and they chose not to. So instead of coaching from the sidelines, if they really want to coach, I'll give them an application. So.
I've done several things. I've actually handed people my whistle. Here, you can do it. And I'm taking off my shirt and go, put it on them. Say, hey, come do it. And they go, I can't do this. Okay. How did you know that? Put it back on. Because it takes a certain personality or a certain kind of person to do that. It's a lot of work. And as a coach, the thing I did was have my team meetings all the time. I would tell, hey, I know they're your parents, but we're gonna have a meeting with them so they understand what you go through. I would actually put them through practice sometimes. I've done that. I will put coaches through practice. To put the parents through practice and go, see, this is what your student goes through. I made it a fun track meet, but I still put them through what they would do in practice. And after they finished the track meet, you're like, okay, we're good. So I totally understand. Put them in the situation to make them feel like, hey, you don't completely understand everything, but try to be on your best behavior is what you're trying to exemplify to them.
And I think it goes back to education a little bit. We have our parents sign a parent code of conduct that explains to them how they should be behaving at a youth basketball game or youth lacrosse game. And we'll send them weekly emails as reminders. These are issues nationwide, so there's a lot of articles out there on how to improve parent behavior at games. And teaching them that as youth sports. The way they conduct themselves in the stands at a Duck or Beaver game is not acceptable at a youth basketball game, right?
All right, try to get through a few of these questions while we have time. And here's one that's very contemporary. How can we support trans youth to participate fully? And boy, if you've been following this issue, it's a very complex one on many levels. But anybody want to try to address this question?
I think we've opened this up. I have a sports psychology class and Title IX and some things that are involved in this whole discussion. You know what's funny? Kids won't talk about it. Adults won't talk about it. It's so politically fired, nobody wants to talk about it. The NCAA is finally starting to take a position on it. I checked in with the OSAA. We have a trans athlete that is doing track and field. And I know as soon as that athlete does that certain event, it's going to displace the female athletes, the biological female athletes, because that athlete is stronger and faster. It's just how it is. Well, how do you address that in a fair, how do you address it? I don't. I follow the OSAA rules. They set the rules. My position is I will love all our kids. I will coach all our kids. We'll follow the OSAA rules. And if I get an interview, I'll say, we love all our kids equally. They all have an equal opportunity. That's my answer. I have personal beliefs, but I will follow that which the OSAA has set forth.
It's for me, if I have athletes who, when I'm officiating, when I have it, I'm just saying anyone else, like, what are your pronouns, what do you like? Like, I'm just respectful. Just do what you're supposed to do. Because they're out there participating, you're gonna protect them and keep them safe like I would do any other student athlete who's out there. So that's the way I've taken it. And I've had a couple trans athletes play on our predominantly girls teams, and I've seen it, like not here in Central York, when I was somewhere else. And it's tough, but you just do your job.
Another question? Not every kid wants to be an athlete. How can we also support the activities to make sure everyone has opportunities for benefits from sports, like fun, teamwork, and discipline?
If I can start off on that one, I'm not a team sport, so I definite advantage. Our sport, my coach's pamphlet, my team captain pamphlet, it always says our goal is to win a state championship every year. It's not an impossible task. It's not likely, but if that's the chance, we'll go do it. But it's not at the cost of sacrificing. We will coach the kid that can't make the long jump pit the same as a kid that's going to win a state championship. One of the greatest successes and celebrations we ever had, I had a girl that she couldn't make the triple jump pit. She tried, and we finally made her a team captain because of her efforts and her leadership. She could never make the triple jump pit. Senior year, JV championships, she made the pit. I fell to the ground and started crying. This is what it's about. Your programs have to be able to support championships and successes at any level. And that's a philosophical thing. If you don't have that, you're a win-at-all-costs coach, you're going to lose those kids that just want to participate. Participation is the key. The championship is a resultant of the philosophy and the culture of your program. If you don't have that, you'll fail. And so we've been fortunate to be able to do both. We'll have 200 kids this year. We had 200 kids last year out for track. And schools our size should have 200 kids. But one of the resource issues we have here, if you don't have coaches in your building, you're not going to get 200 kids out. Because I walk through the halls every day, kids just laugh. They see me go right up to any kid. What event are you doing in track this year? I'm not doing track. Well, yeah, you are. Everybody is. What event are you doing? I guess I'll throw the shot. Okay, great. So it doesn't matter to me which one's the athlete and which one's the not. You just recruit every kid. Because if you believe in the benefit of the sport, it's a benefit to all students, not just the athletes.
I have a non-athlete answer too.
I'm not sure if the author of this question meant like literally non-athletic activities, but our schools have Lego robotics, we have mock trial, we have choir, we have so many cool things. We have culinary. So there are also a myriad of other things that have the developmental aspect that we've been talking about through sports. It's just not the focus today.
Another question? At some schools, the culture is to win, even if it means all the kids on the team I think it should have said, not all the kids play. Are mental health impacts on those kids considered? And Dave, you kind of covered much of that in your discussion, but from the perspective of our Parks and Rec people, any further thoughts about the mental health aspects?
I mean, we have a policy that every kid has to play equal amounts. I mean, obviously the kid doesn't want to play because we have anywhere from preschool to 6th grade. So some of the preschoolers care more about collecting grass blades than they do making the soccer ball. So, but if they want to play, they have to play. And I'm at every game, and mentally it's hard sometimes, but I gotta make sure that a kid is not sitting on the bench for half the game. They're actually out there playing.
Yeah, that's what our recreation programs are built on, is play, and having the kids are signing up for the activity to play and not sit on the bench and watch others play. So we have some pretty strict guidelines that we give coaches in order to make sure that everyone's playing. I'm not sure if that's covering the question there.
Okay, another question?
Hey Jay, if I could make a comment on that one real
Yep.
quick. You mentioned earlier animals play, free play. If we don't start recognizing that the children's playground is now their cell phone, and we don't do something about that, you're gonna see mental health issues continue to get worse and worse and worse. It's not gonna be good. We've gotta find a way to create opportunities for kids to play outside of their playground through the cell phone. If that doesn't change, these discussions won't matter. Kids won't go out. We're seeing less and less activity and more isolation on the cell phone because that's the new playground. So I think we have to be very careful about that, and we need to really, that's an entire another meeting we should probably have for our kids' health.
That's a really interesting concept, and as you were describing that, it occurred to me, every smartphone today has 3 accelerometers in it. There's some cool games that could be developed that use the fact that it measures motion. Another question, has Bend Parks and Recreation Department considered offering more programs for high school students? If you don't make JV or varsity, you have few options to play in the schools. And I commented to Rich, I was amused when I looked at the statistics. They had twice as many 1-year-olds as they had 18-year-olds in their programs last year.
Yeah, that stat's a little deceiving. Those 1-year-olds are probably swim lessons, learning how to swim. And 18-year-olds are that borderline, they're considered adult in our adult leagues. There aren't very many senior playing. So we offer a high school basketball league, and it's really popular this year. It's really cool to see. We give complete control to the kids. They're drafting the team. So we have the kids come in the gymnasium and they schoolyard pick the team for the season. Parents aren't coaching the teams. The kids are coaching their own team. It's really fun to see them take control of the sport and work together to have a fun season. So that's our most popular is high school. So we do offer a high school basketball program. We've tried it with other sports, and I think it's more of a cool thing with the kids. Park and recreation isn't cool for a high school kid to participate. So we have tried it, and we will continue to try it. We try it, and we don't get very many kids sign up because it's not cool to play park and rec sports. So I think maybe changing that thought process and letting kids know, hey, it is fun. Go watch our high school basketball league on Sunday. The kids are having a blast. And I think getting the word out there to the kids that these things are fun, and that if they don't make the high school team, that there's other options. We will continue to try those things. But again, I think there's a lot more 6-year-olds playing soccer because their parent is signing them up and they don't have a voice. 14, 15, 16, 17, 8-year-olds now, they're making their own choices. So that has a lot to do with it too. They may not want to participate in sports anymore or recreational sports. So I think kids have a little more voice as they get older too.
I think we have time for one more question, so it's up there. Facilities are limited. How can we improve as school district, community, and private partners to more efficiently utilize the space we do have? And you guys touched on that a little bit already about, but any last comment about how do we more effectively use what we have?
I'll start real quick, as Dave talked eloquently about that, and I'm all about facilities. I would love more facilities, and I think we would fill them up if we had them. But I think at least the Bend community does a pretty good job. The Park District has a partnership with the Bend La Pine School District. We have 1,700 kids playing basketball this winter, and the Park District doesn't own a gym. So we can't run that program without using school gyms. The school district doesn't have a pool, right? But we have swim teams, we have water polo, so they're using the Park District pool to run those programs. So this day can be a lot about doom and gloom and crisis and what's wrong with youth sports, but I think we're doing a lot of good things in our community, sharing those resources.
I think we need to continue to take a look at opportunities. I think putting in turf fields was one of the smartest things we've ever done. It's those types of investments that are going to pay huge dividends. You have to schedule time on Summit's turf because there's so many people using it. It's not like the old days where you say, hey, we're going to just have practice. You have to schedule it because there's so many teams using it, which is great. Lacrosse should use those fields, right? You don't build a facility so it can only support football. That's only a portion of our population. So the more multi-use facilities we have, the more kids we're gonna have. It's a simple process.
Another part of that is, like Dave said, is multi-use. We don't build soccer fields. We build a field where soccer's playing in the fall, lacrosse is playing in the spring, football's playing. So we're building multi-use areas that aren't just sports specific. I think that kind of thinking.
Can I ask you one question? Why did you guys decide to only have one hoops at your parks versus having a full court? Because many of the parks in Bend, I noticed, have only one hoop there.
I'm not the park planner, so, and I'm a sports guy, Marcus, so I would love full-size basketball courts at all of our parks. We have a lot of dog parks at our parks. You're preaching to the choir here. There's other park and rec people here in the audience, they want to answer.
That was directing, but I know they're here.
Well, I want to thank the panelists for coming out today. Thank all of you for coming as well. I think the committee that runs this organization has some sort of closing act. And presumably, if you have individual questions for these guys, I don't know how long they can stick around, but I'll leave that up to you guys, Cam. Thanks.
Thank you to Jay, Shauna, Marcus, Dave, and Rich for leading us in conversation today. And thank you to our forum team, especially Amy Sabadini from the Classroom Belong Project and member of our program committee for organizing this discussion. Our next meeting will be on Thursday, February 16th. And join us for Help Wanted, Connecting Talent and Opportunity, which will discuss ways local organizations are fast-tracking training programs to get workers qualified and into jobs that serve our community. City Club is seeking new members for our marketing, sponsorship, and membership committees. If you have any interest in that, please contact me. And then finally, if you're not a member and you are interested in joining, please consider doing that before February 15th when we will have a membership pricing increase. Thank you for being here today and your willingness to discuss topics important to our community.